This meeting is locked. You are entering the meeting now.
I mentioned in my notes that you never know what conditions.
At first, I got lost. I was looking around. You mentioned it down.
We'll just set it up right here.
Testing. This is the Dallas campus. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Dr. Rao, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Let me just turn my volume up. Okay. You say that again so I can make sure I can hear you. Okay.
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, testing. Hi, I can hear you.
Okay. Dallas AD person, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
We're hearing like some background noise. I don't want that to interrupt your presentation. Is there a way to mute the microphone in there and then the attendees can unmute if they want to ask questions? Or
Are you talking about like that crunching noise?
I know that's here. I just hear like it sounds like an air conditioner or something. It's fine. It's fine. If not, it's not that big of a deal.
There is a way to mute the mics. I'll let them know when they come in how to toggle them mute.
Okay, there's Becky. Hi, Becky. Hi, how are you? Good. How are you?
Good.
So, Dr. Rao, we are going to have we have postdocs at multiple campuses across Texas. So the room that I'm talking to is Dallas. Our College of Dentistry postdocs are there. And then I'm in Bryan, Texas. And then, so we'll have some people in this room attend.
Okay.
And then we'll also have some people on Zoom. So we just we have an interesting way of all getting together for these seminars. So
Yeah, this is different. This has never happened before, but I'm excited.
yeah, good. Okay, so I switched the camera so that you can see the room. You'll be able to see who's attending here in person. We're setting up lunch right now. We always try to feed them during these seminars. So. And then Dr. Kaur will be on Zoom, and she's going to introduce you. She has your bio. She's going to introduce you, but she's not going to be here in person. She's attending either from home or her lab. So.
Okay. Hi.
Hello, Dr. Rao.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, there you are. I couldn't see you. Gagan, I'm sorry. Dr. Rao, I saw your presentation up earlier. Are you not sharing your screen any longer?
I am. Do you want me to start sharing right away or wait till?
I just want to make sure that we can see it okay here.
Okay. I'll try it right now.
Okay, great. Gagan, can you see that on Zoom?
Yes.
Great. Okay. I'm going to have to leave early, so my student worker here is hosting our in-person attendees here in Bryan. She's setting up lunch right now, and y'all have fun.
Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Rao. How are you?
Good. Yeah, a little bit interesting how it's all set up, just getting used to the Zoom, there's in-person, there's another room. So nice way of all coming together, very convenient.
Mm-hmm. Finally, great to see you.
How long have you been a postdoc for?
Around 4 years.
Okay, so getting ready to transition.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I hope you're reading a short, tiny bio and not the big, extended one. Okay. Because I tend to also introduce myself during the talk in the beginning. So if you don't want to read, keep it to the short and just say Roshni. It's also totally fine.
Some people that don't eat pork or beef, so to let them know that these are all chicken. That is what they want. Yeah, we have to do that. You'll just take care of it, sign in, and let them know. And then there's probably going to be extras, so we'll just take those back to the office. There's no refrigerator. Kim and you and hi, how's it going? Good. So far, yeah, but come sign in, grab lunch. Are those chicken? Grab a lunch and falafels vegetarian. Hi.
human.
Like, it's the texture.
Just so you'll know, I have to pull out, this room has a microphone, just for the whole room, so, I don't know how to mute that necessarily, and I want you guys to be able to ask questions, so just keep that in mind while she's talking.
Okay.
So, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
And would make you gassy. It's just a good statement. How do you know?
True.
Yeah.
Zoe's kitchen.
I don't know. I never been.
Yeah, I think it's Zoe's.
Hey, Stacy, are you there?
She left, she stepped out already.
Okay. Hey, Dr. If you're ready, we can start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our monthly postdoctoral association seminar. Today's Dr. Rao is going to present this seminar, and she is an inaugural director of teachers, which is a career hub for opportunities for doctoral and postdoctoral fellows at Johns Hopkins University. And she has won so many awards, for example, Johns Hopkins University First Penguin Award and Kelly Distinguished Service Award from NIA. She has a passion to advocate for underrepresented and international scholars. She helped doctoral and postdoctoral fellows to connect with proper career lines they want to have. She holds a PhD from biomedical science from University of South Carolina and postgraduate diploma in science from University of Otago, New Zealand. Her bachelor's is from degrees in microbiology and chemistry from St. Joseph College, Bangalore, India. The floor is open for you, Dr.
Thank you so much for this kind introduction, Gagandeep. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm hearing a little bit of an echo of myself, but hopefully you're not hearing anything of the sort on your end. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you for this opportunity to spend this next hour with you to share a few aspects about navigating jobs through my own story as a postdoc and graduate student. Since 2017, I've been navigating and teaching career strategy to others. And I hope that by articulating some of the lessons I personally learned in the last few years, that you may be able to see yourself through this story, and that I may be able to, in some small way, help you consider and prioritize certain aspects of the job search that I now recognize as important. Having been through it and stumbled and learned from failure and missteps for a large part of it, I, like so many of you already have and will, figure out a few things that I feel I can now tell my story. So I've prepared for this talk to be part storytelling, but at the end, let's have a Q&A if time permits. If you have any questions and you are virtual, please put them in the chat box. At the end of these talks, I always get a lot of questions around networking and job search strategies. So I want to make myself available to allow enough time for that as well. So once again, thank you everyone for being here this afternoon and for your willingness to come and listen to my story. So my educational story began in India, in the South Indian city of Bangalore, also known as the Silicon Valley rock music capital or pub city, where I grew up and went to college. In India, it's typical for families to dream to send their children to study abroad. And so after much borrowing from the bank and relatives, my parents and I decided that I should go study abroad. So initially, the intention was to study in the US, but instead at that moment that we found ourselves in, I had chose a more affordable option and headed to study at the University of Otago in New Zealand, a decision that I would never regret because it was simply amazing. I couldn't afford to apply to too many grad schools here, so I applied to a few with no application fees, came to the graduate school at the University of South Carolina, and then went on, as Gagandeep mentioned in the beginning, to do a postdoc at the US FDA. It was at the US FDA, and I'll talk about this a little bit as well, after that I pivoted into a career strategy role at the NIH. And after about 2 years, at the start of January 2020, joined as the inaugural director of this futures office, where up until a few months ago, I was an officer one leading career and professional development programming for over 5,000 doctoral students in STEM fields, humanities, and social sciences. And there's a reason why I'm sharing the details and the story this way, because along this journey, there were many unexpected twists and turns, and many opportunities to do something completely out of my comfort zone. For this reason, I use an image of a road that twists and turns because a straight path would be an unrealistic portrayal of most people's journey, and so would a path without roadblocks and obstacles. When I went to the University of South Carolina for a PhD in the biomedical sciences, I did what many of you probably do, spend a lot of time in the lab, doing experiments, taking classes, attending conferences. And while each lab is different and the expectations to graduate were different, in this lab, you couldn't graduate until you produced 3 first author papers. So I got comfortable in the building, spending many early mornings and nights reading, hypothesizing. That's a picture of the actual building, experimenting, failing, starting over. The second picture is of me, typically, as we do, presenting my work at a conference. And the last picture is on graduation day, and we'll come back to this picture towards the end. Academically, despite the typical failures and joys in science, I saw other graduate students and postdocs work really hard, get their 3 papers, celebrate small wins, and so did I. A culmination of my work included academic awards and papers, and for all intensive purposes, I felt like academia was in the cards ahead. And what my view of the world, my worldview, and my view of my work view included, and that's as much as I had, a life in and beyond an academic position. I was part of a huge lab, and this is just a fraction of the folks in this picture, that got bigger over the years. But one thing was certain. Everyone in the lab went on to either do a postdoc, or after a postdoc, or after graduate school, went to med school. And so I automatically decided that I would do a postdoc. In fact, that decision pleased my advisors to hear. And at the university, there were no other options, really. There was no other plan. There wasn't an opportunity for mentorship. There wasn't a career talk. I haven't been to a career talk in my life prior to actually running a career office. No career workshop days, no guest lectures. If you had asked me back then what venture capital was, or consulting was, or what research at Pfizer looked like, I could not have told you. Not only was there a lack of awareness of options reflected around me, but between lab and classes and navigating a new country and friends and relationships, there was certainly a lack of self-awareness too. I wasn't really asking or seeking many other questions other than my research questions in my lab. So upon graduation, I continued on the path of research and joined a lab at the FDA, confident that the path ahead was linear, straightforward, and what lay ahead was a scientific research career, and I never questioned it. By the time I was a postdoc at the FDA, I figured an FDA career is inevitable, right? People there had like 30-year FDA careers. But nothing is certain in life, as the last few years have taught us, and certainly not in the life of an international student. So over the course of the FDA, several things happen. It would become a case of expectation versus reality, where the reality was my PI left, I moved to a new lab, I went from doing these complex independent experiments in grad school to what I felt was quite uninspiring projects in a particular lab. My visa was ending, my husband and I got married and got pregnant and engaged within a month. And what happened essentially was life happened, and it was stressful. And it was an awakening. I suddenly had many realizations when I became a mother. My experiences thus far were framed from a perspective of a single child-free woman in academia. And when I framed it from the viewpoint of being a mother, I found that research life for me, where I was at that moment, was sort of unconducive to my values and what I basically wanted out of life in the big picture. 3 years into a postdoc, I found myself unaware of career options, not having too many people I knew outside my bubbles and immediate circle. And most importantly, I hadn't really sat with myself about the realities of what I wanted to do in a job, how I wanted to contribute to society, and what would give me meaning. In short, there wasn't much of a coherence between what I wanted from life and what I wanted from work. There was a disconnect. So at a crossroads of life and career, I began to question that singular avenue I had pre-decided for myself. it dawned on me slowly and steadily 3 years into my postdoc that I needed to expand my view and for the first time think about the path ahead. What I was feeling was what many of you may have felt in the past or are feeling currently, which was very stuck. And with feeling stuck comes a bunch of panic. So our offices at Johns Hopkins are sort of designed on this principle of life design. It's basically taken a page out of the book of designers from Stanford University and how they design products and how when they encounter problems along the way of designing products, how they plan their way forward. So when designers encounter a problem, they call it a wicked problem because although there are ways to feel unstuck, the answer to getting there is not so simple. So before I lamented on the ifs, buts, could haves, and would haves, and all the steps I could have taken to expand my career horizons, I had to start with empathizing and accepting my situation, just start from where I was. I had to clearly recognize what I was feeling in the present moment and regard that experience with compassion. So, some of you may also have thoughts like this. I wish I had done an internship earlier in my grad experience. My postdoc doesn't allow me the time and freedom to explore different careers. I just don't want you all to also feel the ifs, buts, would haves, and could haves. You empathize with where you are. When you encounter a research problem or even a life problem, we try to problem solve solutions for a way forward. So to first do this, what do? We work with the information or data that we do have, and then we design our way forward, right? So here, I had to solve, and you may be needing to solve a career problem. I had to first collect data on myself. And this is what I did know. I did know I took time for the first time to articulate in a long, long time what were some elements of my day to day that brought me joy and what drained me. Like I knew I really liked science, freedom, creativity, solving problems. I liked working with people. I liked using data to make decisions, and I like to continuously learn. What I didn't find joyful at that point was the idea of writing grants, maybe the academic pace, working with animals, maybe academic culture. I hadn't in the past articulated or even thought about what I liked and what I enjoyed doing. I also, during grad school, was really involved in student organizations and leadership. I and maybe even you have tended to brush off these activities as something that you could be busy with other than postdoc or grad school. And even when I was eventually creating a resume for jobs, I minimized all my extracurricular activities and didn't even consider it in the framework of who I was and what I enjoyed doing. My identity was tied to that of a scientist, and that meant downplaying the other aspects of my identity and what brought me joy. So when I look back, and especially at these pictures, I was on every student organization committee, leadership position across the university, national conferences, and I'm always taking part in like extra activities. And it came quite naturally. So my internal compass would waver between the expectation of what I should do and what everyone was telling me I should do, and all the multiple things that I actually could do. So reflecting on that, I began to recognize that if I could combine what I learned and developed during grad school, like being analytical, communicating well, problem solving, if I combine that with aspects of me that I was good at outside of the lab.
So we apologize for this background.
That's okay. I'm listening.
Can you please, guys, in the conference room, use the mute button and the remote control to mute yourself? There's a lot of background coming from the conference room. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So I realized when I combined my background and what I was sort of good at outside of the lab, I realized that there were some big picture things starting to emerge. I like innovating. I'm creative. I dislike the status quo. I enjoy leadership. I'm good with people. I love to teach. And ultimately, I get energy from doing all these aspects. So I had asked Gagandeep to share a little handout with you that I've created that accompanies this talk. And this is to do in your own time, and we can send it later as well. I'd like you to just sit down and take a moment to articulate with yourself 6 to 8 activities that you really enjoy doing. Don't write research. Break down research into analyzing data, giving presentations, going to academic conferences. Make a list of 6 to 8 activities, and then review that 6 to 8 activities and circle 2 to 3 activities with a plus mark. What do you find delightful? What is intriguing? What is worthy of future exploration? Circle that activity and pay attention to what brings you energy and what completely drains you. When I, at that moment, 3 to 4 years into my postdoc, did that, that linear path transformed into multiple and equally enticing options. And I dove into learning all things about job search. So at this point, this topic was of the talk was titled Lessons Learned and Things to Consider. I'd like to share with you a couple of lessons. First of all, your career, as with life, is not linear. I think if we can take away anything that I've said so far, it can be full of twists and turns, and that's completely okay. After having spoken to hundreds of people with different careers and interviews and panels and so on and so forth, I rarely see someone who's had an absolutely linear path outside of an academic circle. I also make it sound like, self-reflection is enough to go from point A to point B, but I wish it were that easy. This realization and these lessons learned and this growth is a bit uncomfortable and a bit painful and a whole lot of stressful, especially when I was doing a postdoc, commuting, being a mother, networking. All that is a lot of work. Sometimes we joke saying looking for a job is a job in itself. So other things that I learned are academic skills that you're honing and developing as a postdoc now. It can certainly be applied to academia, but certainly also to multiple other options. I realized that I am just more than just a scientist or a postdoc. I am all these other things as well. For my personality, needed to complement my time in the lab with doing other things that brought me joy and kept me balanced. So I'd encourage you, if you're thinking about going on that committee or going to that conference or going to that professional society and networking, those extracurricular activities are not a waste of time. And finally, through those energy gauges and that activity that's in your little worksheet, maybe taking the time to understand and pay attention to what energizes you and what not. So, I mentioned a terminology called transferable skills. Your academic skills honed and developed can be applied to multiple things, right? Pay attention to what those transferable or translational skills look like. There is no one way to be, and many of us have different passions. The real question is, what are you curious about and what would make you feel fulfilled? And I can say 4 years ago, I was curious about exploring a career in career education. Now, I might be curious about what is in leadership positions in industry. So the curiosity keeps on evolving and changing. I'll shift gears a little bit and talk about something that comes up in all my student and postdoc consultations at some point during our talk. So although I moved through my different personal and professional challenges and got older and got more confident, what I know to be that looming fear, you may have all heard of that crafty little imposter fear thing that seems to tag along for the ride, it's sort of tagged along with me as well. In fact, as I began my new job at Hopkins, I had to build this career office from the ground up. I texted my old team at the NIH. I said, I feel like I've gone from swimming in the kiddie pool to the ocean. And then she said, stop it. You are brilliant, creative, professional who can absolutely rock this job. So it felt, like I truly did not belong, even after making it through 5 rounds of interviews. I believe that I did not know as much as others. And if you're like me, and if you identify as a woman, 70% of women have already felt this way. In fact, the term imposter syndrome was basically invented after a study done with women PhDs. So you know that it exists, and if it exists, we know it really sucks. I always had at the back of my mind those nagging thoughts during lab meeting or during grad school or postdoc. I have no idea why these people at lab meeting buy my research hypothesis. Maybe I shouldn't open my mouth. Others sound so smart. I feel so dumb. How did I get that award? Maybe I'm the only one who applied, right? So I'm sure many of you can relate to some of this like negative self-talk or these fears that we face. And I really don't call imposter syndrome anymore. I call it imposter fears, because it's something that I have learned to manage a little better, although it's always there as well. So why does it suck? Why does imposter fears suck, especially in the context of looking for careers? It sucks for many reasons. It's impossible for us to admit we don't know something. It makes it feel like it's impossible. It prevents us from stretching ourselves fully. Maybe I won't apply for that award because I'm not good enough. Maybe I won't apply for that job. I don't have the skills. It makes us feel bad. It's negative self-talk. It causes anxiety, fear, and shame. And many times this imposter fears is linked to a past failure or a fear of failure. So what I'm sharing today, when we teach life design or designing our career, we label some of these imposter fears, or we've recognized that some of these imposter fears are essentially called dysfunctional beliefs. They're dysfunctional because they are not helpful and they're ungenerative. Ungenerative means it holds us back. So we do an exercise called reframing your dysfunctional beliefs. And I'll walk with you a little bit about what that reframing looks like. Many times, just adjusting and making small tweaks to the messages that we're saying in our head, these ungenerative beliefs, can help us manage our fears of not being good enough, of feeling like we don't belong. And before I talk about imposter fears and dysfunctional belief, I want to acknowledge something. Sometimes it is imposter fears, certainly. Sometimes, especially for people of color, women of color, it's the environment that makes you feel like you don't belong. So learning to discern whether it's truly imposter fears or whether you're in an uninclusive, exclusive work culture also makes a difference, and some things that you should be thinking about as you work through your next career steps. What kind of work culture do you want to enter into? So what are some dysfunctional beliefs that we could reframe, right? Some of us might say it's too late to try that, right? And that's the message we ask ourselves. Maybe a way to reframe that is it's never too late to design a life you love. It's never too late to embark on a learning process, on a new job. Maybe someone is saying, and students and postdocs often say this, I am going to blow the interview. I'm not prepared. I won't even apply. Maybe a way to reframe that is I'll prepare for my interview, so I have a good chance of getting the job offer. My experiments are a failure, hence I am a failure. My experiments do not define me. I'm more than just my experiments. I will not write to that person on LinkedIn. They're too busy. They will not answer, right? But what if I said, I will write a brief message and be open to the possibility that they may respond? Because if they respond, the best scenario is that you've connected with that person and you're going to have a conversation. So my lessons and things to consider as we go through the career journey, my remedy for personal imposter fears, which for me had roots in my culture, how I grew up, this need to provide value to others, I've learned that, first of all, I'm not alone. It's okay, and you are not alone. It's okay to have imposter moments. Imposter fears can be managed. One way that people often say this, and you'll see this conversation on Twitter as well, track your achievements, update your CV, update your resume, make sure you're doing that so you realize how much you've actually done. Reframing these dysfunctional beliefs takes practice. You're not just going to suddenly trick your brain into reframing some negative self-talk, but the more you do it, the more it becomes a habit for our brains to do that. For me, it has helped to focus on providing value to others. Like, for example, taking a moment to share my story with you, maybe on LinkedIn, maybe through the stock. And then one thing I've realized is as I go into interviews, as I write my resume, as I write my cover letter, the more I just present myself authentically as me, which includes being, embracing my identities, embracing the fact, my accent, things like that. The more I do it, the more confident I feel. And then finally, you might have heard this, a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Oftentimes your interviews that you go on will be designed in order to see if you have a growth mindset. For example, in an interview, you might get a question, tell me about a time that you handled failure. What did you do, right? They just want to see what your outlook on failure is, whether you have a growth mindset or not. And then finally, I always experiment in my job now. I say, let's try this, let's try that. It's because I was trained as a scientist. I'm not afraid to fail because I've done it so much. So understanding that that link of imposter fears linked to failure, it's actually a good thing to fail like a scientist or a researcher, because it's just been another opportunity to get more data to learn. So as it stands now, imposter fears does show up now and then. I've learned to trust my gut in a situation, but I've stopped apologizing for taking a seat at the table. What I know may be something different to what other people know. I'm aware of my strengths and I'm also aware of my limitations. So when I'm going into an interview for a job, I'm able to have that self-awareness of what my strengths and limitations are. So at this point, again, I'll just remind everybody to just add a few questions in the chat box if you want, or unmute yourselves, or if you're in the room, you can ask question as well. Anytime, just feel free to interrupt me. But at this point, I want to emphasize the importance of people in designing your future careers. It wasn't until later when I joined professional networks like LinkedIn or Twitter that I realized that people have great careers and lives outside of my bubbles in grad school and postdoc. You always hear the importance of networking or relationship building. And I want to quickly share an example testifying its importance in my own life. I made a LinkedIn profile in my postdoc when I realized I need to look for another job. And I made the profile in 2017. And then I used it for informational interviews. One thing led to another. I reached out to someone who also went to New Zealand, but who was a New Zealander who works in South Carolina, who now works at AstraZeneca. And I reached out to him, and he invited me to AstraZeneca, which was 30 minutes away. We had a conversation. I shadowed his team, and then I realized that job's not for me. So it led to informational interviews. I applied for my first job on LinkedIn. I found my second job and applied on LinkedIn. And prior to preparing for my interview for my current job, I reached out to people who worked in that department on LinkedIn and got some information. I usually get invited to give talks through LinkedIn. I post on LinkedIn. I just wanted to mention a common theme here, which is LinkedIn. And I always advocate this to students and postdocs. Is it's like an encyclopedia. You want to look up someone who is a FIFA referee and a chemistry PhD. The likelihood of finding them on LinkedIn is very high. And that's how I find all my speakers and career chats and podcasts and everybody on LinkedIn. So just an idea of the kind of visibility, the kind of people connection that exists out there beyond our academic world. So I mentioned going and meeting that person at AstraZeneca, and you can see here the kinds of messages I sent. And he said, nice to hear from you. Of course, I'd be happy to discuss and use my network to get you where you want to be. Can you come visit, right? Many people feel that networking is icky or it's transactional or that you're asking for too much. But networking on LinkedIn doesn't have to be like that. It isn't about instant gratification. I can tell you that much. I met them in 2017, visited their team, maintained the relationship over the next few years. And 2020, when I joined in my lab, when I joined this job, they sent someone from their lab to talk with me about their career. Like it just came around full circle. People I interviewed with in 2017 at a consulting firm, those folks now are recruiting Johns Hopkins PhDs, and I'm in touch with them. So, it's a long sort of investment. It is not about instant gratification. So in some ways in which you can maintain a relationship with someone you may have had an informational interview chat with, send them a holiday message, thank them for taking the time out to talk to you, update them about your next steps, and small messages. And these are kinds of examples of messages that I have received. Thanks for connecting. Thank you for your helpful tips today during the workshop. I'm slowly working to improve my profile. Or someone else I sent a message to. Thanks for adding me on LinkedIn. I know it's been a few years. Congrats on your position at Rutgers. And that professor said, thanks, great to see you're doing well. Take care, hope to catch up sometime. These are conversations that are going behind the scenes on LinkedIn. Small messages. The other day, a student said, hey, Roshni, just wanted to update you that I finished my comprehensive exams. And this is someone I'd done an informational interview with 2 years ago. So, just small conversations are nice ways of maintaining a relationship with someone. So for me, after I had these informational interviews, I mentioned that I went on the AstraZeneca talk and I realized this is not a job for me. What happened was that one linear path that had divided into three or four multiple options, suddenly I started getting clarity. I started understanding that I would be very interested in a career in education, perhaps consulting, perhaps something with a little bit of leadership in it. Each of these paths would have been equally enticing. I would have been comfortable doing any of these roles since they all included elements of what fulfilled me. So if there was a Venn diagram here, you would see that each of these roles means I'm working with people, I can be creative, I'm innovative. So I could have walked down the path of consulting, I could have walked down another path of being a manager somewhere, I could have walked a path of education. At that moment where I was in life, I chose the education part, and that's how I ended up in my job at the NIA. I didn't even know a job like mine existed until I was browsing jobs on LinkedIn and found the job description. That's how I knew, oh, there are career offices out there. I had no clue. So the lessons I've learned from this portion of of this journey that I've been on is understand the importance of just having a simple conversation with someone. Informational interviews, and if you go to the YouTube channel that we have, that Futures Office has, there's a whole bunch of resources on what are informational interviews. In the handout that I've given attached to stock, I have listed questions that you can ask of someone at an informational interview. Maintain your connections. Again, it's not about instantly getting what you want. Okay. The more you invest into a relationship, as with all relationships, the more you get out of it. Networking does not have to be icky. And this is a given. You all know this already, but I will mention it. That's why I like LinkedIn so much better than my world on Twitter. On LinkedIn, there are folks without a PhD who are doing great and successful things. And they're kind and they're brilliant and they're innovative. And I like learning from them. So titles and education are secondary to respect and kindness, and that's given. And at the end of the day, you are going to need allies and supporters along the way. Find your people, find your community, your mentors. They don't necessarily have to be your supervisors. Seek them out, and most importantly, let them help you. As you make decisions about each step along your path, you're going to need those cheerleaders, like the one that told me, snap out of it, you got this. So you're going to need your cheerleaders along the way. So at this moment in time, okay, I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to ask for a little bit of engagement from you all. I know sometimes it's hard, lunchtime and everything, but it's a very small ask. Can you tell me or put words in the chat box or shout them out of what I may have been feeling on the day of my graduation when you see this picture? What are some words that come to mind?
I think relieved that you have done your PhD finally.
Relieved. What else?
I would say fears and concerns, maybe
Fears.
for what kind of future maybe
Okay.
is waiting ahead.
Yeah, very. You've all been there. You've all had graduation days. So confident. I'm seeing confident.
Yes.
Usually I get proud, really excited. Okay, I'll reveal the big reveal of what I was feeling. Are you right? Are you wrong? I was tired, isolated, haggard. I had been through quite a bit of trauma during the few months. I was depressed. I was exhausted. The smile does not tell the whole story. And many of these feelings, it's normal at the end of a PhD. You've all been there to have gone through. It's a big task, but I had an extra layer of traumatic experience, and I was hiding a lot in this picture. If there's one thing I can do once again in grad school that I regret not doing way more of, it's prioritizing my health and wellness. So you're going to have to need this even in your career as you transition out of postdoc into your next role. What is it that matters to you in your day-to-day work? Some people, like for me, even in the beginning of my job search, it was very important for me to help people and to do good. I have transitioned after 4 years in a role out of postdoc to understand that perhaps it's okay to just go do a job and be done with it at the end of the day, because there's a life beyond your job. There's a child, there's poetry, there's things I enjoy, like doing up my house. There's a world outside of my job. Perhaps it's okay to go 9 to 5 and not give your heart and soul to a job. That's just me and my realizations. What is the realization that you're having about your next steps, right? Certainly, focusing on our physical and mental well-being is of critical importance. I have a friend who started a job, a brown woman who started a job in a predominantly white space at a bank, and 3 months into her job has found that she's not happy. Her mental health is very much not where it's supposed to be, and she gave in her resignation as of yesterday. And brown people in the room here will tell you that's a lot to say I quit. There's a lot to say I'm putting my mental health on first. I'm prioritizing my mental health. But it's impossible for her to perform at her job and be happy and fulfilled at her work because mental health was the most important aspect of it. So while I was in grad school, I took a total of 0 vacations over 5 years and never visited my family as an international student. When I was on maternity leave during my postdoc, my PI told me that I had to finish a book chapter on maternity leave that we were co-writing. But then she never wrote her part until a year later. So I was sitting there like breastfeeding. I had this weird pregnancy rash, and I was trying to write a book chapter during that time. And I should have never been in that position. Until I came to the NIH, I founded the Be Well at Work program. I hadn't prioritized my mental wellness or physical wellness. And not prioritizing our wellness in our work culture can become a habit. And that's something that I have fed over the years, because I have that habit is because I feared that taking a break would set me back in my mission to do my work. Yet every month, at the end of the month, I would fall sick. I would be completely exhausted and burnt out. And especially during this virtual times of parenting and doing a job and building an office, it's super, super, super hard. So lessons that I've learned as I focus my career and my career plans are, first of all, quitting a career path is completely okay. And that's the first conversations my friend and I had when she made that decision. It's completely 100% okay. You could and can design a wholesome career with a PhD, but once your mental health sort of is at the forefront and that you don't get support in the environment that you're in, it becomes harder to do your job. You are a whole person. You bring value to this world. Again, your identity is not just tied to sort of your work. There are other aspects of your identity you can lean into. It's absolutely important to maintain your hobbies. And then finally, I want to, 2 things. One is ask for help. Don't struggle alone. Okay. Yesterday I got a message from a postdoc who has had 47 applications since last June and not a single job interview. And he's been sitting in silence over it. Ask for help. Let's figure it out. Let's go over your network. Let's see who are in my contact list. Let's look over your resume. Let's look over your interviewing skills and figure out why this is happening. Ask for help. And finally, therapy is amazing. When again, this is very cultural, right? International folks don't really talk about the importance of mental health and therapy. I'd like to encourage you to do that, because in just speaking with a therapist regularly, I don't think I would have made big career moves or assessed why I want to change careers, why I want to take on more responsibilities. Good therapist is amazing. I just wanted to destigmatize that aspect, that it's important for us to realize these lessons as we move through our career and as we want to become successful during our career. What can you do that soothes your soul during your work, outside of your work? What brings you joy? What fuels you? What drains your energy? And most importantly, in work cultures, who drains your energy? So for me, I like to do a lot of other things beyond my work. There's poetry, there's mothering, there's music. Actually, the first picture is we started a talent show in the NIH that I started, and so that was part of performing at a talent show. So prioritize your well-being in the process of designing your career. And I just wanted to re-emphasize, as everything, it takes practice to have to do this. So with that, I'd like to pause here and sort of take a few questions from you about anything that I've shared. I have no idea what time it is. Yeah, in the last 10-15 minutes. Take any questions from me about career strategies, anything that I've shared, anything about the journey that where you are that I can help answer. Thank you for your time listening to my story.
I have a question, Dr. Rao.
Okay.
So you mentioned that during your maternity leave, your professor bombarded you with lots of work, right?
Yeah.
So how to handle that situation, because it's for females, international female, it's a really big issue. And I have heard this thing from my colleagues who are planning for their families, their PIs. They have told them specifically on their face that they have to choose either career or their family life.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. Last time I gave this talk at St. Jude's, someone wrote to me on LinkedIn and had the exact same concern. First of all, those are toxic environments. Those are conversations that should not be had. That's also an HR conversation. You can always take it to HR. They're not supposed to bring that up. But unfortunately, in academia, there is a power dynamic. There's a hierarchical structure. And when you add layers of being international, you feel like you don't have a voice. I would say we should start practicing putting up our boundaries, even as international folks. I think we should start understanding first that there are other people that we can reach out to for support. First of all, like find other mentors outside of your supervisor. To learn to say no more often. I should have said no, but you're right. I also felt like there was a power dynamic. Had I stood up and just said, this is not the time. I would love to write this book chapter. However, I would like to write it after I come back from maternity leave. I don't think that would have changed the dynamic. Perhaps my mentor or my supervisor at that time, who's also a woman, would have been like, okay, I never asked. So understanding that we can speak up, we do have more of a voice than we believe. I think that's important. To speak with other people, don't have multiple mentors around. Go and have seek the advice of someone else, maybe who shares the same identity as you as well. Maybe another woman of color, maybe another international folk. Reach out and ask for help and see what you could do in that situation. But what I would have done in hindsight would have just been to speak up more. And what I'm still learning to do is putting boundaries in place around my work. The other day, a student wrote to me and said, can we meet? And I said, okay, here's a date. And he said, can we meet on Saturday? I cannot meet. Old me would have been like, I need to do whatever I need to do to help the student. New me is like, I don't work on Saturdays. You'll have to make time to meet with me during a work period between 9 and 5. So boundaries are important, and setting them early is absolutely critical. And you're going to need that when you transition into your professional work anyway.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, thanks for the nice talk. I was just wondering, I've had informational interviews when I have talked with someone that came over like in person and stuff, and it's pretty difficult having invite me or whatever that case via LinkedIn. So I was just wondering, what would be like a good way, or if you have any particular suggestions of how to go about asking for an informational interview through LinkedIn or via email or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, a lot of people think that it's an imposition. It's asking too much of a person. But understand that the LinkedIn platform, that's what happens regularly. I wrote to someone today to ask for an informational interview. So first I found them on LinkedIn, added a connection. You know how you can connect with someone, but always add a note. You want to do the add note section. Add note and say, what was his name? His name was Pablo. Hi, Pablo. My name is Roshni, and I'm the director at Johns Hopkins University. I'm fascinated by your career trajectory. Would love to connect on LinkedIn. Send. They accept my request. I don't know. I sent this today in the morning, but this has tended to happen with me in the past. They accept my connection, and then I follow up. I follow up with a DM, and I say, Thanks so much for connecting. I'm fascinated by your career trajectory, especially I'm very specific about what part of their career trajectory. Would you be open to a 20 to 30-minute chat via Zoom or over a phone call? I'd love to learn more about your career growth and how you transition into this role. Send. So now they respond and say, yeah, please work with my executive assistant to set up a time. Here's my email address. You move to email and you email them and then set up, be as flexible as possible to accommodate their schedule. Send the Zoom link or the phone number that you want to call and set it up quite immediately. When you go to the informational interview, make sure you go prepared. It's not a chat about things that you can Google. What do you want to know about their career path? What specific questions do you want to ask? What does your day-to-day look like? What do you love about your job? What do you think you would have done differently when you applied for this job? What was the reason you got hired? You want to get that information. Ask very clear, very specific questions to them. Make best use of that 20 to 30 minutes, and then most importantly, follow up with them after the conversation. Thank you so much. That was so insightful. Would you be okay if I kept you in mind as other opportunities come up, and perhaps in your company, if you have any opportunities for internships or full-time positions, I'd be interested. Never assume they want to see your resume. You can even ask that. If you would like to see my resume, it's attached. I sent a message today saying, my resume is attached in brackets. No pressure to view it. It's just so that you can get to know me better. So you don't want to ask big things in informational interviews, small asks, very specific. And it has worked in the past when I was navigating job roles, it has worked. One informational interview even led to a real in-person interview that led to a job offer at one point. So you never know what comes out of it. But that's how simple. That's how you would go about it. Do expect that when you're reaching out to people in informational interviews, that not everyone's going to answer. So if you connect and you send a message and they haven't answered, I would follow up one time, maybe a week or 2 weeks after. And if they've seen your message on LinkedIn and still don't respond, move on to someone else because clearly they're really busy and something's going on with them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a question here.
Okay.
I mean, you talked about self-awareness and to be a self-aware and acknowledge internally that you have the confidence and knowledge to be, for example, in a meeting and never to be apologetic. But from your experience, what do you think the biggest challenge for somebody to be self-aware and gather all these confidence?
Yeah, so what's the key to self-awareness is essentially what it comes down to. I'd say one of my biggest challenges has been to make the time to sit down with myself. You're in the lab, you're busy with work, you're busy with life, there's family stuff, there's this and that. I don't have a minute to sit down with myself to think about what am I good at? Where do I need to work? What are my gaps? What are the jobs out there? Let me browse through jobs on LinkedIn. I don't have a minute to do that. Let me look through job descriptions and see what jumps out at me. I don't have the time to do that. So my biggest challenge would be the time. And the remedy to making that time has been no meeting days or allotting 2 hours on a Friday afternoon to dedicate to this, or allowing myself 1 hour on the weekend, maybe Sunday, to just sitting with myself and thinking about what do I want to do next. Sometimes it's very unclear. And then combine that with a multitude of options out there. What am I good at? So another thing to think about is even though you might choose tomorrow to be a consultant at a big firm, it doesn't mean 4 years from now you can change a job and pivot into something else. You would have built up like all these different skills in the consulting role that you can probably use to be a venture capitalist. So just understanding that career moves and pivots happen all the time and it's very fluid. So if I know that and I'm aware and self-aware of how I could pivot in the future, then I take that pressure off of me as well. So that's one thing I would say has been a challenge that I'm now learning how to navigate. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Okay.
Great.
Is there any more question from the audience? Anyone?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask another question. So, from your experience, I mean, what is the best resources that you usually, use in order to, enrich your experience? I mean, do you use books, for example? Do you follow blogs, and how? I mean, what do you think about that?
Best resource has been to talk to people.
Mhm.
I don't get as much of an insight from like a blog or a video as much as I get from hearing people's stories. And that's why I kind of formulate my talks as stories, because the way in which you can relate what I like, how I'm good at, what I do, what I'm interested in is just learning from other people's stories. What do you do? What do you enjoy? Why do you do what you do? Why does it matter? Talking to other people has been the biggest resource for me. Not to say that there aren't other resources. When I was first looking at career strategy, I would look at blogs, Google search, how do I make a LinkedIn profile? I would literally Google it and see what experts have said, and then adapt and take in their suggestions and try it out. Again, if I experimented with a couple of styles. I took this person's style and made my LinkedIn headline a certain way. It didn't feel right, so I changed it. So it's all about experimentation. It's all about reinventing yourself and to tell your story. So I think yearly I change my LinkedIn profile as I learn and I evolve and I add more skills to my plate. My LinkedIn headline is something might change. So that's one way, observing other people who are having the same background as you, or who have the career you want to transition into. What are they doing? What does their profile look like is a good resource. We have a whole YouTube channel that we've collected over the past 2 years that's full of career conversations, workshops, things like that. I've put the QR code in the thing, so you can take a look at that as well. But wealth of information, I'd say people.
That's great.
Yeah. See a hand at the back.
Roshni, thank you for your talk. It was very authentic and very real, and I'm sure it resonated with me, and I'm sure it resonated with a lot more people listening to you. I have one question, and this just is going with this whole LinkedIn thing. Now, every institution has a postdoc association. Our institution has one too. But the reality of it is, most of us just get wrapped up with our work. I have a restriction digest going on just to come and listen to your talk. You know what I mean? Everything is planned around work. Sometimes it just, that's the reality of it all.
Yeah.
Is there something out there, like maybe through LinkedIn or something outside, that like a supportive network, that as we face, each one has their own individual story. To some level, it might connect with yours, but there may be some ways it's a little different. But then if we knew what was out there, maybe there would be more resources than we think there may be. Because even talking with people, you don't even know who to approach sometimes.
Right.
We just wrapped up with our own work, and even the confidence to know that there is more out there.
Right.
May not be there, especially when you have a lot of doors closed to you.
Yeah.
You knock on those doors and they're closed to you. And it kind of shatters confidence at some point.
Right.
Is there some sort of a supportive network? Just like ResearchGate, people talk about problems with research. Is there something out there where people connect outside the institution and can actually share? Even if you have something, I don't know if there is something you have where people connect via you. I don't know what's out there. Just something. There is something.
So, let me cover a bunch of stuff. So, there's a bunch of things. Follow people who are on LinkedIn, who post on their LinkedIn posts, resources, thoughts, career paths. There are people, like I usually will post like 5 tips to enhance your resume, and people share it and things like that. Follow folks who are in this career space that have some value and wisdom to offer for free. You can do that. That's for free. Say you are running a restriction digest or a PCR or whatever. and there's a podcast. Let's say Johns Hopkins University students started a podcast called Hopkins Biotech Network. Listen to the podcast, get your information. There's topics where they interview for 20 minutes. Folks, there are a lot of career podcasts like this, but follow some podcasts perhaps, absorb that knowledge, let it sink in. There's a lot of career pathways, there's a lot of tips that people are offering all the time. They teach you how to interview better through a podcast. Even if you have access through your university to LinkedIn Learning, you can always listen to the LinkedIn Learning audio and the video as well. There are resources out there, like I mentioned, the YouTube channel that you can just listen to when you're doing your experiments. You'll get some information. As for a formal network, there are, I hesitate to give you the names of these like professional career networks because they charge you money. It's like you have to pay like a membership fee of like $400, and then they sell it like you now have a lifetime membership. Even if you join those professional networks, you still have to invest the time to go and go to their meetings, to talk to people. You still have to do what I'm telling you without those networks, which is talk to people. You still have to invest that time anyway. So there exists, you'll find a bunch with a simple search on LinkedIn, but they'll take your money. There's a lot of free resources out there as well that you don't have to pay money for. One thing I will say, restriction digests are going to be there, but investing in your career is your investment to make. No one else is going to sort of put in the time to go to an informational chat or update your resume. And there's a whole bunch of resources on how to update your resume. You just have to make the time. Don't do what I did, which was wait till the last minute as my visa was ending to suddenly learn how to make a resume. Now, if you're early in your postdoc career, figure out what is an effective resume for industry. Figure out through watching maybe my YouTube or something. I have a video there. Figure out how to write a cover letter. Write your cover letter. Keep it ready. So when the moment comes, you'll just be ready and you can send them out. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do. I hope that's helpful. There's some paid networks as well. One example is like Cheeky Scientists. You pay for it and you can join the group. But much of the advice that they give you is freely available if you follow people in the career space like me, or you follow some, I don't know what career path you're interested in. What's your name? Sorry.
I'm Karina Menezes.
What are you interested in, Karina? Like what career path, you know?
You know, like you, motherhood kind of changes your initial
Right.
plan. So this is one of the reasons I was wondering whether there's a supportive network outside, because, you know, being a mother, to sometimes you wave off meeting with my colleagues here because I have to pick up my children from the school bus.
Right.
You know what I mean? Things like that, just simple things. And sometimes you have more free time on a Saturday to do LinkedIn. And so I was thinking more along the times of how to maximize the time I have,
Right.
versus be there to I mean, all of us want something beyond this.
Yeah.
And a tenure track path may not be the thing for all.
Mm-hmm.
Each one's gonna have their own unique career path available to them. So I mean, at this point, I'm kind of open. I did take a break in between to try the industry path, but it didn't work out.
Okay.
So I'm back at the bench after taking a break from motherhood.
Okay.
And I'm kind of open, but I want to do it differently this time. Like you, I don't want to just waste all my time just focusing on the experiments, but focusing more on transferable skills.
Right.
And I can gain from here.
Reach out to me. We can talk a little bit more. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, and then we can strategize a few things.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, I think that's all questions, Gagandeep.
I think so too. Is there any more questions? Okay. You can always reach out to Dr. Rao. She replies quickly.
Sometimes.
Thank you so much for your talk, and it was really, really helpful for all the international people, especially brown women.
Thank you for having me. I have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Your meeting has ended.